Assalamualaikum Nadia, are you here?
Walaikum salam, miss. How are you?
I'm good, Alhamdulillah. Uh, how is everything? Are you able to revise, look back to the chapter?
Yes, I revised what we did last time. It's understood.
Okay. So today we have the topic of data and data analysis, and it's a last topic for this chapter. I guess there is one more. Also, before we start, when did we decide the date for like a makeup class? Like, did we decide on Monday?
Yes, on Monday.
All right, on Monday. And Monday, what time would suit you?
In the morning, if you want, like 11 or something like that.
Mhm. Okay, so it will be 12 here. All right. Okay. So I'm gonna put that time down. I'm gonna confirm you by tomorrow as well if there's any changing. Otherwise, we'll stick to that time. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So data and data analysis, we're gonna talk about like when we collect the data from the from the participants through all the methods that we have talked about. How do we analyze it? How do we make sense of it? We're just gonna talk about some very basic statistical techniques. First of all, we have to understand what the type of data is that we're dealing with. Like you can, as a result of a psychological research, you can have two types of data. Either you'll get data that's in numbers, like the quantitative data, or either you'll get data which is like there's a lot of detail, in-depth information, and in-depth information, and you'll get like when we take interviews, people respond to them, and we get like essay form of questions and all that, like answers that are a bit descriptive in nature. So we'll have quantitative data and qualitative data. Now, uh, the analysis of both of these data types is quite different. When we have quantitative data, we have data in numbers, right? So we have बड़े मीठा ले लो रख लो ये रख लो So we have data that's in numbers, and like we can analyze it by different statistical tools like mean, median, mode. We have these ways. You might have used them before as well, like in basic math, you might have used them. So mean, median, mode, that data, like that type of analysis is quite simple. But when we have qualitative data, the analysis is a bit different because we are not dealing with numbers. We're not dealing with the we're not dealing with anything that's like maybe someone has given a longer answer, someone has given a shorter answer. So we don't have anything that's similar. So that kind of data is dealt with in a different way. We're going to talk about it as well. First, if we cover quantitative data, uh, now the type of data you use that has its strengths and weaknesses as well. So, for example, if we have quantitative data, we are going to have objective measures. Now, what does that mean, and why is that a strength? Because when you use quantitative data, you can apply mathematical functions on it. Like you can add up all the responses, you can like find the average, find the mean, find like a common let's say a number that can represent the whole data. So you'll have like these kind of measures, and they are all objective because they don't have any sort of biasness. Like if you're adding someone's data, or if you're putting it under the mathematical formulas or techniques, there is no bias. Like we don't have any like favor towards one of the participant. We're not putting any sort of our own interpretation onto that data. Like we're just gonna look at the result that comes up after we solve it through a formula. So we don't have any particular intention to or inclination to mold the data in a certain way. Now, in any study that where you come across quantitative data, you can just put that as a strength, that the analysis is objective in nature, and because of that, you're going to get results that can be trusted, that are reliable, objective, all that. Scales or questions are often very reliable. Like reliable means like they can be very like they can be used by other people as well, time and time again. They can be retested again and again, so they are reliable. They provide a consistent way of doing that, and the data can be analyzed using measures of central tendency, which are mean, median, and mode. Central tendency means like we mold the data in a way so we get a central value or an average value to represent the whole data. For example, if we have a math test and two sections section A and section B of sixth grade have given a math test, and you want to see which section did better. So we can take the average of section A and section B, and we can see that which section has the highest average marks. For example, if section A has 90 marks and section B has average of 60 marks, then it tells us that section B did not do well as compared to section A. So that's a central tendency. So we get a central value or an average value for the data. And we also have measures of spread where we have the range and the standard deviation. Uh, Range and standard deviation tell us like how the scores are spread. Like for example, if 10 people gave a test, did all of them get almost the same marks or they got different marks? Like for example, we'll also talk about it when we get to it, but spread basically tells us that are the scores clustered together or are they spread evenly? Like are people getting, some are getting very high marks, some are getting very low marks, or all of them are getting like the same kind of marks, or of all the scores are almost the same. So these are the different strengths or different concepts related to quantitative data. um, the weaknesses of this data type are that um, we can only get like we don't get in-depth information. We can only get certain kind of information. Like for example, if I ask you to fill up a questionnaire and the questionnaire has options of yes, no, or maybe some options like for example, when do you go to gym, how many times do you go to a gym, and the options are like frequently or 2 days a week or 5 days a week or something like that. So I only get that kind of information. But if I ask you the question like, how is the process of going to gym for you? Do you like going to the gym? What is the most advantage or benefit that you have received by going to the gym? So if I ask you that kind of question, I'll get a more detailed reply. But if I ask you the other kind of question, I'll get, maybe you'll pick one response. So I don't get an in-depth form of reply. So these are the different strengths and weaknesses of the quantitative type of data. I'll give you a minute to go through it, and then we can move to the qualitative data. Okay? Let me know if anything is difficult.
Okay. Okay, everything's clear.
Yeah. Okay, so the qualitative data is the kind of data where we have open-ended questions, and the answers are also open-ended, and we get a lot of detail, we get a lot of like like a big answer or a response. So qualitative data are in-depth, and they have a more detailed account of the of the experience of the individual, so we get a lot of detail. Now we cannot apply the same methods as we did in the quantitative data to a qualitative data. Like we cannot sum up everything, we cannot put any mathematical idea to it. So that is why the way to analyze this is different as well. So they have probably not went into the detail of how to do it, but I will explain it to you. So what happens is, like, when we have qualitative data, we read the answer, like whatever the, for example, if a person has responded to a question about bullying, and they have explained their experiences of bullying, so they're probably going to say that, like, I experienced bullying when I was when I was in my sixth grade, and my the most of the bullies, they teased me about my let's say my weight or my hairstyle, and they bullied me by spreading rumors about me, and they spread this rumor that I don't wash my hair and something like that, or I have lice maybe. Like, for example, if someone is giving that kind of reply, now how would we analyze it? We would pick up, or we could read the answer, like no matter how long it is, we first have to like transcribe it, write it down somewhere. We have to mention each and every detail of the answer. Like, we can't just pick and choose, like, oh, this is important and this is not. We have to write it down on a piece of paper. Like, people who are doing qualitative analysis, they have like a long like they have so much data, they have a overall, like, they have a lot of journals and registers when they're doing this kind of data. So they have a lot of written material, and they have to write down each and every detail of the answer. And once they do it, then they have to find codes and themes in them. Like anything that is a common, like they first have to find the codes, and then from those codes, they make up the themes. Like, for example, if 10 people were interviewed, and all of them said that they were bullied about their weight, or all of them said that they were bullied about their hairstyle, then we can pick out that. Mostly sixth graders are bullied about their weight, and then some of them are bullied about their hairstyles. So we have to pick out from whatever the person has said. Now it depends upon the answer that they have given, the amount of information that they have given that, and also there is a bit of subjectivity here, because the researcher, although they have to like transcribe each and every part of the data, but sometimes a researcher might think that, okay, so this information is important, and maybe the other part of information is not that important. Like, they can also pick and choose, and they can also, like, put their own bias in there. So that is also something that we have to be careful about, that are we including any sort of bias in the data, or are we just transcribing or writing down what's there. Like, we can't just um, um, add information or write down things that are not really true. So we have to be careful about it. So qualitative data includes like in-depth data, and it also requires you to be very objective, but it's a bit difficult because you're interpreting the data based on your own experiences. If the researcher is himself or herself bullied, then maybe they'll pick up certain part of information more as compared to the other. So subjectivity risk is there. Now, whenever a study is using qualitative data, you have to include that the weakness is that the data interpretation might be subjective. However, the strength is that it is in-depth information, and a lot of details can be can and like we can make bring a lot of details to qualitative data. the valid as the quantitative data is very reliable, like it can be because it the way that it is like the way that it is taken is a bit reliable. However, the qualitative data can be very valid because people are giving in-depth information about themselves. So they may be, more honest, more open about their feelings and their experiences. Chance of them lying or something is lower. Another weakness of qualitative data is that whenever we have to use that kind of data, we don't take a large number of people. Like we restrict the sample to maybe 10, 8 to 10 people. We don't take a lot of people because then what happens is that when we take a large number of people, then it gets very difficult for us to actually make sense of the data. So like there's another rule as well that when you're taking qualitative data, you can only take it up to a point, like when the details keep on repeating. Like for example, if five people have said that they got bullied because of rumors, then at that time you can stop asking more people. So, like if the details keep on repeating themselves, if same information keeps on coming, then at that time we can stop collecting more data because we have reached a plateau of the information. So we can stop doing it at that point. Okay. Now let's go to the descriptive statistics part. Is there any question, anything that's a bit doubtful? Let me know, Nadia.
No, it's all clear.
Right. Now we're going to do the descriptive statistics part. We're going to see how we can analyze the data that we receive from our study, the data without any without any sort of analysis done on it is called as raw data. And we have studies often produce a great deal of raw data, and we need to interpret it in order to make sense of the data. First of all, we have many different techniques to do it, but the ones that are listed here obviously are according to the level that we are at. And when you go in university or maybe other, then you will see that there are so many different techniques to make sense of this data. So right now we're just going to do the very simple ones like the mean median mode, and we're going to talk about standard deviation and range as well when we go to the measures of spread. So the first thing is uh, like whenever you receive the data, you can first like over here. So we have data from two different groups of student, A level and degree level, and we have asked them like how much time they spend working per week, and how much time they spend socializing per week, and how much is their stress level. Now they have already made averages from the data, and even if you look at this, like so far there is not a lot of work on the data, like there's no correlation or something, but we can still see that the average time spent working is more in the degree level as compared to A level. And then socializing is also more in the degree level, and stress level is like just a point high. So we can have some sense that the degree level students are experiencing, they're working more, they're stressing more, and their socializing is also higher. Now, in this way, we can make sense of what our result is going to be. Uh, Now, the first way that we can make sense of it is the mode. The mode is the basically the value that is the most frequently present, and we use the mode in certain kinds of data whenever we have a data that is basically have you ever done the types of data in any other context?
Yeah, we did it in like math, mode and median and range.
Yeah, but what about like nominal, ordinal, those types?
No.
Okay, let me try. Okay, let me take a picture, show you from here. So we have different types of data. Like sometimes we have data that is in categories. Okay. Like for example, if we ask someone, are you yeah. Like for example, are you living in a joint family or a nuclear family, right? And they tell us that they live in a joint family. Then we are going to have, yeah, here we can do it. So if they say that they live in a joint family, like they live with their like their grandparents and their parents' family, like their brothers of their father and like all that, like a big families living together. So we can say that this kind of data is basically a categorical data, like like it is in categories, right? So like data like marital status, which party they belong to, all of that is a categorical data. In these type of data we can do the mode, like we can do mode in the type of data where there is a category. So I don't think this is a good example, but over here this they have explained it. So over here, we have different subjects like math, English, psychology, and they have asked which is your favorite subject. Now, which is my favorite subject if let's say people said psychology. So they have chosen a specific category. The important thing about this kind of data is that it cannot be continuous. Like if someone says, "Oh, I like half psychology," it wouldn't make sense, right? Like either they like psychology and English or they like just psychology. Like maybe they like two subjects more. Like instead of picking one, they can pick two, but they can't pick two and a half or one and a half or 0.5. So this categorical data is the one that exists in a specific category. Like either you will live in a joint family or you live in a nuclear family. Either you are married or you are unmarried or maybe belonging to some other category. So just like remember when we were doing correlations, we talked that we cannot have a correlation in gender because no one can be like a half male and a half female. Like they can either belong to a different category, but they cannot be like something half or 0.5 or something. So those things that cannot be, those variables that cannot be presented as in numbers in the form of continuous data, they are expressed by the categorical data, like belonging to a different, liking a different subject, belonging to a different category, belonging to like either yes or no. So from on those type of data we usually do the mode, because we cannot do a mean, like we cannot take the average out, we cannot take the median out of it because they need to be done on a set of scores or a set of numbers. So the mode is the data that is frequently present, and it can be used with numerical data like scores and also with the data that are choices that can be counted. Similarly, there is another one like here. Uh, Here people have done told about when they do the homework. So the boys have picked out that they do the homework on Sunday, and the girls have picked two options, Friday and Sunday. So there are two modes in there. So the data is bimodal. Like we can also have two datas at one point. In like this exam, maybe you'll asked to do this. You will also be asked about the strength and weakness of the mode. What do you think is the strength of this mode? Like this calculation of mode. Is there any strength?
We can find out like which day is the most is the homework done most in. So we can find the average.
Mm-hmm. But We can also find it by mean. So why do you think we should go for the mode?
Mode is just simply looking at which, for example, which day like
Hmm.
the has the most amount of number. So we don't have to do extra calculations.
Hmm. Okay, we don't have to do extra calculations. Yes, good. And we can do it on categorical data. So that can also be a strength. What do you think is a weakness of mode?
Because there's like more modes or more categories that could be the answer or the result.
Hmm.
So it's not as informative.
Hmm. Yes, good. Because if we have like a large calculation or we have a very big amount of data, then there can be different modes in there. So because of that, we cannot find out, like we cannot be sure about the mode, or and also it doesn't take into account all of the values. Like again, if we have a large amount of data, we'll have multiple modes and it won't make sense. Also over here, if we look in the girls data, we can see that some of the girls have also picked out Thursday, but because it's not reaching the mode part, so we have just ignored it. But four girls have also picked out Thursday as well. So maybe if we were doing mean or something, so when we include all of the values, it gives us an advantage. But because we cannot include all the values in the mode, that's why we have a difficulty. So good. Okay. When we come to the median, we have the in the median we have continuous data, like we can only use it with the numerical data on a linear scale, like points in a sequence we can use them. Like here we can use numbers that exist in the scoring, like zero point 0.5 or 1.5. The easier way to remember is the data on which you can do the median and the mean, and even the mode on is the data where you can find the scores. But if the data is categorical, then you cannot do the mean and median, only you can do the mode in there. So for categorical data, the only way to find average is by doing the mode. But if the data is not categorical, then you can apply all three ways on it. So how do we find the median? We arrange the scores in some order, like increase higher to lower or lower to higher. And then if the data is odd, we can just look at it and we can point it out. If the data is even, then we have to find the average of the middle two numbers. Again, just like the mode, a median also take into account just the middle values. It ignores the values in the very end or the very beginning, because it the way that is calculated doesn't take that into account. So if someone like if the middle value, let's say if it's a score, like if the class has scored something, there are three people who scored 90 and in 80s, but the middle value is like 30 and 32. So we're gonna get the average of 32. Maybe we'll ignore the student who's got 90 out of 100 because they're at the extreme part. So median takes into account very selective values, and because of it, some values would be ignored. We can also compare data through median, like we have data of students from AS and A level, and we can compare them. And if you look at it, like in the AS students, whatever the um, the survey was about how hard they have worked. So AS students said that they worked, like their score is 6, and A level student score is 8. So we can say that the mean level of A level is higher as compared to the, sorry, we can say the median, not the mean, the average or the mean. We can say that. Then comes the mean. The mean is the one that's average, and to find out the average, we do this method that we divide. We first add up all the scores, and when did we divide it by the total number of scores. So the mean is the one that includes all of the values in the data set, not just the middle, not just the one that's frequently present. It takes into account all of the different scores that are present. So the mean is a measure of central tendency that also called as average, and it considers values of each of the scores in the data set. So the issue with that is it can be influenced by the outlying score. Now, what happens is that if we are trying to find the mean of something, and if there is a very, very large value present at the extreme end, like maybe someone has scored 0, or maybe someone has scored 98 out of 100. Both of them are extreme values because both of them will be added, and the overall score will be divided by the number of scores. Then we are going to have a problem here because they can affect the overall value of the data set. Okay. Uh, Now let's go to the measures of spread. Are you able to understand it? Like, are these easy for you? Is this easy?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Now we have the measures of spread. Now, measures of spread are how the data is spread around the mean. Like, how are the values similar to each other? Are they different from each other? Now, why do we do it? Because we see that mean is can be affected by the extreme scores. The median is only taking the scores in the middle. The mode is only using the ones that frequent. So there are some issues with all of these three measurements. So because of that, we find the measures of spread a bit more convenient, as mm, they basically tell us how the scores are clustered around the center. Now, this is a better measurement form than the mean, median, and mode because it doesn't get affected by the extreme values, because it is telling us the distance of the value from the mean. So, for example, if we will also see the procedure for calculating standard deviation, then it will make more sense. Basically, we are trying to find out how the scores are spread around the mean, how much they are distant from the mean. So, in this way, we don't have the issues of them getting affected by the extreme values. There are two different measures here. First is the range, and second is the standard deviation. Range is very, very, very simple. What we do here is that we find out the difference between the highest and the lowest value in the data set. So in a range, we like, for example, if we have calculated the scores of the students, and one student has scored 98 and the other has scored 10, then we're just going to find 98 minus 10, and we're going to get the difference, and that is going to be the range. Range is like how much like the scores are varying from one another. So what is the range of the score? Like when we go to a shop and we ask like what is the range of the prices. So they say that it starts from $10 to $100. So we see that the range is 90. So, and let's say we go to another shop and over there we ask the same question, and they say that it starts from $10 till $10,000. So we get to know, oh my God, the range is too high. Like there's something for $10, and there's also something that's costing $10,000. So over there, the it tells us that the things that they have there are the prices are very different from one another. So the range is basically the highest minus the lowest value, and it can tell us how much how much difference is between all of the scores. Now, okay. Now, there's just one thing that we have to do when we are doing it for a questionnaire. Like for a score, you can do it like just by subtracting. But you have to carefully see that if in your question they have included a questionnaire, like over here we have the happiness scales. So when we are doing that, uh, we like for example, if we have this like if we have a psychological scale, we don't have measurements like we see in a ruler or in a mathematics scale. Like for example, you have a measuring tool and it says 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it has equal distances. Like from 2 to 3 there are 10 lines on the ruler or the scale. If you can imagine in your mind, you will see equal number of lines between it, like 2.5, 4.5. It's all equal. But if we use a scale that is made in psychology, it's going to be like strongly agree, strongly disagree, and something like that. So if we have that kind of scale, then it's probably better to add one in it. So in psychology, we do this because the scales we use measure the gaps between points. I'm reading from here. Measure the gaps between points, not the points themselves. Like we are not measuring 1 to 2, we are measuring the gap between the point. Like the gap from 2 to 3 is being measured. So it's not always equivalent to 1. So it's better to add 1 to it. So if we find first of all the largest and the smallest value, then we add 1 to it. That will give us the exact range for the score. So if someone's happiness is at level 3, they could be anywhere between 2.5 and 3.5. Like just to be sure, it's not going to be actually like what is 3 happiness scale? It doesn't make sense, right? Like what's 3 on happiness? It's just a made up scale. It's not an actual mathematical scale. So because of that, if someone says that they're at 3, so just to be sure, they can be between 2.5 and 3.5. And someone scoring 6 has a happiness level between 5.5 and 6.5. So if 3 and 6 were the lowest and the highest values, the real spread extends to those limit, like from 2.5 to 6.5. Like in the psychology scale, actually if someone is 3, they are not actually at 3, they might be from 2.5 to 3.5. And then if someone is at 6, it might be from 5.5 to 6.5. So the actual lesser and the extreme values would be 2.5 to 6.5. So when we do that, the answer would be 4. Like if we did 6 minus 3, the answer would be 3. But because in a psychological scale, the rulings are a bit different, we get 2.5 to 6.5 and we get the answer of 4. So if we so to remove complication, like stop finding out the point and all that, what we do it is like we just subtract the highest minus lowest and we add 1 to it. So if we did like 6 minus 3, we will get 3. We need to add 1 to it and we will get the answer 4. That is the actual answer. So that is why when you have a psychological scale, do this. But if you have a score or like something that is done on a mathematical scale, like in if you're giving score to someone on an exam, we can give them score of 25 out of 30 or something like that. So if we are giving them that kind of score that exists on a mathematical scale, we can find it out the traditional way. But if we have a psychological scale measuring anger, happiness, depression, anxiety or anything like that, the range is to be found out by this method. Is that clear, Adia? Do you get it?
Yes, so we always add one, right?
Yeah, when we are doing a psychological scale, like happiness scale or aggression scale or something. Yeah. If it's a height measurement, if it's someone's like marks in psychology, then like in an exam or a test, then not. But if it's a psychological scale, we add 1 to it. Okay. Now the range, the issues with range are now that it does not accurately reflect outliers. Acha, for the exam, be very sure about the strengths and weaknesses of these methods, because maybe you'll get a question where you have to find out the range or the mean or the median, and then you'll get a 1 mark question where you have to write the strength and weakness of this. So make a note for yourself to always be sure of what the strength and weakness of each of these methods are, because you will be asked about it. Okay? Like even if you have to do calculation part, the next part would be about the strength and weakness. So keep all of these in mind. So this weakness of the range is, again, it does not accurately reflect outliers. That is, it would not be clear from the range whether the most extreme scores, the very large scores, were single odd scores or typical of the data set. Imagine that the least hardworking student in the A level set had rated themselves as working at level 1 rather than 4. This would make very little difference to the mean. Uh, wait. Hello, Nadia, can you hear me? You're muted, Nadia, can you hear me? No. Hello, Nadia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay. I don't know, something happened to the internet. Okay, so we were discussing like if like the range does not accurately reflect the outliers. Still there, okay. I share my screen. That the range does not clearly reflect the outliers. Like we can't be sure that whether the most extreme scores were single, odd, or typical. Like maybe there are more people scoring, like let's say if the highest score is 10 in somewhere. So is everyone scoring 10, or is just the score of 10 just once? Like if the score of 10 or the highest value is just coming once, then it's not an outlier. It is the typical value. But if it is just coming once and everyone is scoring like zeros and twos and ones, like in single digit, and there's one person who scored 10, then it is an outlier. But because the range is like we have to subtract the highest from the lowest value, then we would not be able to identify it as an outlier. Like, for example, if the data is like this, data is like this 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, and then there's someone scoring 10. So the way you make range is 10 minus, because here we have 0, so the range would be 10, and we have to add 1, so the range would be 11 over here. Now, overall, you're getting that people have scored differently from each other, and the range of the score is 11. However, if we look over here, all the people have scored almost the same. Like ones, there are three, there are so many people scoring one, just a few scoring two, and just one scoring three, and then there's one person who scored 10. So basically, 10 and 0 are the outliers, but because the procedure of range is such that we can't identify it. So this is the weakness with finding the range. If the data is like not spread equally, then we won't be able to identify whether the range is basically an outlier or something that's average for the data. Does it make sense?
Could you repeat that one time?
Yeah. So basically, let's see if you have scored like this, like 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, and 10. Now, which is the like, do you think the people have scored similar to each other or differently? What's your analysis? Yeah.
They're mostly similar except for one.
Yeah. The 10 is the different one, right?
Yes.
Hmm. So if people, now the way we find the range is we subtract the highest minus the lowest. So the highest score is 10, the lowest score is 0. So 10 minus 0 is going to be 10, and then we add plus 1 to it because it's psychology. So we add it and it becomes 11. So 11 is the range of score. Now, if we were doing some other way of calculation, we could see that 10, the value of 10 is basically an outlier. What is an outlier? Some value that is completely different from the set. But because the range, the way of calculating ranges are such that you subtract the highest minus the lowest, so the range includes the outlier into its calculation method. It cannot identify that, oh, this is an outlier. Like if we see it, then we can identify it, but in reality, the value of 10 is actually an outlier. So now come here to this part that it does not arrange, does not accurately reflect the outlier. It would not be clear from the range whether the most extreme scores, like the very large scores, were single odd scores or typical of the data set. Now this score, the 10 score, is not typical of the data set. It was a very different value, but the ones are typical of the data set. So we can't find that out. Like if I tell you the range of scores is 11, you won't be able to, tell me, like you won't be able to understand that everyone was scoring differently. Like there were so many scores of ones. You would maybe think that, okay, someone scored 5, someone scored 6, someone scored 7. But if you actually look at the data, a lot of the people were scoring 1, right? They were not scoring very differently from one another. But the range is 11. So we see that, okay, 11 people gave the test, 11 of them scored differently from one another. But in reality, that's not the case. Most of the people scored the same score, like either 1 or 2 or 3. Does it make sense now? It's okay if it
Yes,
doesn't.
it
You can
does.
ask me. Yeah.
No, no, it does.
Okay. So this is the weakness of the range, okay? The other strengths and all that is that it tells you how different the scores are, what is the range of the scores, but overall the weakness is that it does not accurately reflect the outliers. Then we come to standard deviation, and in standard deviation, um, let me find a worked example. Wait. Mm, I don't know what's the issue with the internet. It's working fine. Let me share this again. Okay, let's do it from the book. Get this. Okay, standard deviation is something that where we try to find out like the distance of each score from the mean. Now, the way we do it is that let's say, let me open a document and then do it there. Open it and then everything stopped sharing. Okay. Let's say that we have a certain group of scores and we have 10, we have 8, 6, 4, 2. Okay. And can add more to it. Mm, okay. 2 and 2. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to find the mean of this data. Okay. Because standard deviation, we are trying to find out how much the each of the score is away from the mean, like how the scores are spread around the mean. Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay, so first of all, basically standard deviation has a formula, and whenever we have to find it out, we just like we have to fill the values in that formula, and then we get an answer, and that tells us that like on the basis of that answer, we can tell whether the scores are away from the mean or they are spread around the mean or not. So the formula basically is here. The formula is SD is equal to summation, like the sign is of summation, x minus x bar, underscore. Don't know how to make a bar. I don't have my own laptop today. I'm just gonna do it. Okay. Like this, x minus x bar whole square divided by n minus 1, and then the whole thing overall, whatever you get, the answer is whole squared. This is the formula. Okay, so summation x minus x, this is I don't know what I've written mu. Yeah, this is the formula. This is better. Okay, x minus x bar whole square divided by n minus 1, and then you do the whole square root of the whole thing. Now how do we do this, the scary looking formula? How do we deal with it? We first have to find the mean of all of these numbers. Now take a minute and do it quickly, like find the mean. I'll also do it so we are sure with the calculations. Let me know when you have found it.
It's divided by 7, right?
Hmm.
So about like 4.85.
Yeah, right. Now, this is the mean, okay? So now we are gonna find out how every score is, of how much every score is away from the mean. So we are gonna subtract each score from 4.85. So we can either do 10 minus 4.85, and we're gonna get the answer. So we're gonna get 5, like roughly 5.
5.15.
Yeah. And then we're gonna do the next. Like some answers are going to be in with a minus sign, and some are going to be in like a positive sign. So we get minus 2.85. Like for simplicity, let me just write this one as 2, this one as 2, but you in your exam write the full, like whatever number that you're getting, at least to 2 decimal points. Okay, I'm gonna write this one as 3, this one as again like maybe 2, yeah, 1. This one can also say 1, and this one we're gonna say minus 2. I'm just doing it for simplicity, so because we have to take square roots further. So the mean is going to be 4.85. The next part is like you have to subtract each score from the mean, and in this process you're going to get some values with the negative sign and some with the positive sign. It's all fine, okay? Don't worry about the positive and negative sign. Then, because some values are with the negative sign and some are with the positive sign, so we are going to take squares of it. So whichever score you get in this part, just square it out. So 5 is going to become 25, 2's are going to become 4, 3 is going to become 9, 1 will stay 1, um, this will also stay 1, and 2 will become 4. Now all the positive negative signs are removed, and we are just going to add up this whole thing. This is the value for this part of the formula. So the any number that you get from here, you are going to assume that this is not assume, this is actually this part of the formula, the summation x minus x bar. We have just taken it all down like in the columns. So the first thing we did was x minus x bar here, then we took square of it, now we are adding it, so summation means adding it, so we get the answer of this part. So we're gonna get 25 plus 4,
48.
48. Okay, get 48. So we got this part here. Now the next part is you're gonna divide it by n minus 1. So 48 divided by n is 7, right? We have 7 people here. N is basically the number of the people, number of the scores. So n is 7. We're going to divide it by 6 maybe. 7 minus 1 is 6. This is in the part of the formula. So 6 eights are 48. And we're
So
then,
8.
yeah. And then, because remember we had a square root as well. So we're going to do the square root of 8. What is that going to be?
2.8.
Yes. This is your standard deviation. Now, what does it mean? It means that every score in the data set is different by 2.8 points from the mean. So the mean is 4.8. The mean was 4.8, and every score is around like this much units away from the mean. So if we talk about, let's say, the score of the score of 6 or 8. So we can say that 6 is one standard deviation away from the mean. 8 is almost 3 standard deviations away from the mean. 10 is like 5 standard deviations away from the mean. It's also telling us that the scores are different from the mean. Like overall, the mean was around 5, so the scores over here are different from the mean. If this value of standard deviation is 1, then it would mean that the scores are just 1 point away from the mean. If the value is, let's say, 20, then it means that scores are very varied from one another. In your exam, the question that you might get is like this one. Over here, they did two standard deviations. One is 2.62 and one is 1.72. So the students whose score is standard deviation of like 2 points away, their scores are going to be very different as compared to people who have standard deviation of 1.7. So the standard deviation of 1.7 tells us that the scores are less different, but the standard deviation of 2.6 tells us that the scores are more different. So this is the like the result of this standard deviation thing. You'll just get to know whether your scores are different from each other or same as each other. Okay,
Okay.
we can revisit it if you want. On in our next class, we'll get back to it. I'll bring up another question as well for you to do, so you'll get the hang of it, and then we'll do some questions related to it. So do you know how it is going to be used? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Nadia. See you on Monday, inshallah. Bye bye.
Inshallah. See you. Bye.